Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are very happy to be here and to present to you today from the Small Business Development Center. Right now, we're very excited to have you. Thank you for joining us. This is NJ Thrives. It is a webinar series brought to you by the America's Small Business Development Center to the state of New Jersey. We provide weekly webinars to help all New Jersey small business owners start, grow, and help their business thrive. I'm your host, Marjorie Salas, and I'm also an NJSBDC consultant. This is part of the Tech Team series. We are America's New Jersey Small Business Development Center Network Tech Team, an exclusive technology commercialization team providing technical support and guidance to eligible innovators of SBIR and STTR grants to fund the R&D towards commercialization and tech innovations. We provide no-cost pitch proposal consulting, training and events starting at zero cost, and exclusive small business tech resources. If you can see in our map, anywhere near New Jersey, wherever you are, there will be a center near you. Today's agenda, we're very excited for today's presentation. I will read over some headlines and then we will move with the presentation and then we'll do a quick Q&A. So the small business headlines of the week. SBA announces an extension of moratorium on eligible requirement. So let me open it up for you. This is a short read. You guys able to see this screen? A bona fide place of business moratorium will increase the opportunity for small business and disadvantaged businesses to expand and grow their business. This was released on August 21st. Today is the first day of a multi-city Alaska trip. Small Business Administration, Isabel Casilla Guzman, announced an extension of the business development bona fide place of business. This is very interesting for a lot of small businesses. Let me go back to my slides. Oh, what's happening here? Oh, sorry. On second headline, we have the NJEDA to launch a 10 million food desert relief tax credit auction. This is very interesting for people who are interested in opening up businesses in food desert areas. It's $10 million. They will have all the information and it has additional links where you can apply and get more information about this tax credit auction. And we also have, purchase discounted tax credit towards support of food security. This is correlated to the previous headline, so make sure you go in and read to get more information, especially if you are thinking of opening up a business within the food industry. All right. Things to keep in mind is to please put your questions in the Q&A box. Very, very important. And for the speakers, we love to get our survey. And for you, I'm sure you like to get the slides of this presentation. So it is very important that you submit your survey. It's a quick survey, 3 minutes, and you will get you will provide feedback to the speaker back. And today we have Dusty Lane. She's the DHS SBIR Program Director, and we are very excited to have her here today to present to you. Right now, we're 65 people who will take all this information, apply it to their business. Correct, Dusty?
Yes. And I love your updates. It was a while before I had heard the term food desert. And when I read about it, it was not at all what I thought that the term just isn't. Then when you read about where there are food deserts, like, wow, that's
Right.
amazing. So that's great news.
Well, here you have you guys. Very excited for your presentation. I'm gonna mute myself now.
Thank you very much. I am very pleased to be able to present to everybody today. I love being able to spread the word about the fantastic SBIR or Small Business Innovation Research Program. Just for a quick heads up and a little bit of a teaser, I also have the LRBAA Long Range Broad Agency Announcement Program at DHS S&T. So I'll be doing a little bit on that program as well, which is eligible to many different folks, and is something I think that the small businesses should be aware of as well. So going right into it, I think. I don't know, next slide, please. I'm not sure how many folks are familiar with the SBIR program. We started ours in 2004, which is a year after the establishment of DHS, which was established, of course, subsequent to the attacks of September 11th, with the mission to make sure that we can counter terrorism and homeland security threats, secure cyberspace and critical infrastructure, strengthen preparedness and resilience, secure our borders and approaches, and preserve and uphold the nation's prosperity and economic security. And that economic security is certainly bolstered by small businesses. And I think the DHS SBIR program does a lot to help that as well. So we are celebrating our 20th anniversary. And so I tell everybody we're no longer in our feisty teenage years. Next slide. So the SBIR program, the DHS SBIR program, does support the missions across DHS. And so I'd like to make sure folks are aware of all of the places that DHS is operating and the places that they serve. So many of these you may have heard of. FEMA, which does disaster response, but they also work with communities to help them develop their own resiliency plans, because FEMA becoming involved means there's a major disaster, and typically that would mean that we have to get resources there. To the greatest extent that communities are able to help themselves and be resilient, then that makes that response even more effective and more immediate. Customs and Border Protection is the agency, part of the agency responsible for when people or goods are coming into the U.S. So a lot of folks think of them on the border, but if you've flown internationally, you'll know that they also help to vet the goods and services and people that are coming. It's goods and people that are coming in through the airways. The Coast Guard is part of the DHS mission, even though they're military, and they can be pulled into the military in the event of a situation that requires them to be as such. But I always recommend people Google DHS in a day, because there's a document out there that shows what we do in a day's time, and it can help give perspective on all of the missions and the number and the resources needed for that. And one of them is the Coast Guard and the number of rescues they do per day, in addition to helping to protect our littoral areas from incursions from nefarious or malicious attacks. TSA is the Transportation and Security Administration. Most of us know of them related to flying, but they also do work with the Department of Transportation and help to secure other transportation vehicles and venues. Immigration Customs Enforcement, they're the ones responsible for the enforcement of our customs rules once things are inside our borders. Once they've gone through CBP and gotten into the US, then that's when ICE is responsible. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is always hard to say, and so I'm glad I got through it this time, CISA, is recently expanded to include the infrastructure security. So there's a lot going on there that folks may have heard about that is really important and stuff that we're working to help move the needle on in terms of security. The Secret Service, many people know that relation to VIPs and, our political folks, but they also handle money counterfeiting and credit card fraud. So if you were wondering where that was in the federal government, there you go. And then Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction Office, again, was recently expanded. They were previously responsible simply for, and I would say simply, for nuclear detection threats and those sorts of things. Now their scope includes weapons of mass destruction more broadly. And then first responders I have on here, not because they're in your local communities and they are not owned by DHS. We do not, fund them. We do not, we're not responsible for their execution. Your communities are. At the same time, we do develop technologies to help them be able to carry out their missions in a safer, secure, and more efficient way, because they are inherently part of many of the disaster responses that we need to be able to respond to and impact our Homeland Security mission. So I'd like to provide this as awareness of what DHS does. Next slide, please. So SBIR, what we came here to talk about primarily, was established in 1982 by Congress, and any agency with more than $100 million in extramural funding must establish an SBIR program. And it is intended to be able to be a mechanism where small businesses can have the ability to partner with the federal government to solve needs, because we know how innovative you are, and we know how agile you are. This is part of your survival mechanisms, is to make sure that you're being able to, as was even discussed earlier, and why it's important making sure that small businesses have the ability to thrive. And of course, again, you guys are a huge part of our economic security. So I'm very, very happy to be having a job within the SBIR program, as I've had for the last 17 years. Next slide. All right. So there's been reauthorizations, although it's 40 years old, program does have to be reauthorized in its current form. I would love to see it made a permanent program, but every legislative requirement, legislative reauthorization typically comes with some new requirements. So one of the most recent one has to do with the fact that we care about making sure that we are aware of and fight nefarious and malicious foreign incursions. We lose billions of dollars a year in our economy from intellectual property theft and other. So it's not even just a potential mission, direct mission threat to DHS and other agencies. So as part of this, we are going to be asking for more information going forward on the types of nexus that you may have related to foreign nationals and foreign persons. Just know that this is in our way to help to promote this security and in our partnership for you and for us. We're also going to be doing some things related to cybersecurity practices and awareness, and looking to try to make sure that the proper security practices are in place, and to do what we can to try to help move that for small businesses. Next slide. So how does the DHS SBIR program get executed? What is the process? So this chevron graphic is basically the process overall. I always like to look at that top yellow chevron as our internal process. And so we will start with we will go out to the DHS internal community and ask for problems that we have in the execution of our mission that we don't know how to solve. And where can we go? How can we get solutions to that? And so folks will submit topics to our office, internal to our office, and internal DHS to our office. We will go through those. We will make sure that we're looking at them in terms of the ability for there to be freedom for innovation. We'll make sure that this isn't something that a small business can't own the intellectual property for, because that's part of the SBIR data rights. We'll make sure that it's something that is within the scope of what a small business can do for the 3-phase program. And we'll look and make sure that it's something that we have the ability to provide the expertise in. So some of the things that we have to factor in are part of this process that are outlined on the Chevron graph. So for DHS, right now, our phase 1 is typically $150,000 threshold and a 5-month period of performance. Now, I say this right now because over the history, we have changed both those thresholds and those dollar amounts. And we'll talk a little bit later in this presentation about how important it is to understand what the solicitation that is coming out says. But $150,000 as a kind of ROM and 5 months in duration. They are funded with SBIR funds, and I'll talk about the TABA in a future slide. 2/3 of the work must be performed by the small business. All the work must be performed in the US. And we do offer some other opportunities that I'll talk about again in another slide related to the I-Corps program. From there, all phase 1 awardees, we will usually select about three companies in the phase 1 to pursue a phase 1. The idea there is this is risk. Anytime you're doing R&D, that is a risky endeavor. We want to make sure that we're able to mitigate some of that risk by choosing a couple of proposals that look like they have the best fit for DHS needs to go forward to be able to demonstrate the feasibility of their approach. At the end of that phase 1, per legislation, all phase 1 awardees will have the opportunity to submit for a phase 2 award. So you'll get as a phase 1 awardee, you'll get the information close to the end of the phase 1 about how to submit for a phase 2 proposal. For the phase 2 proposal, our thresholds right now are $1 million and the period of performance is 2 years. The TABA for the phase 2 is inclusive of that $1 million. I'll reiterate that later, but it is inclusive. Again, all of the work must be performed in the US still, and 50% of that work must be performed by the small business in the phase 2. And we're really looking for the ability to be able to commercialize. So as we move through the phase 1 and the phase 2, we are going to be becoming more and more concentrated on making sure we have a viable commercialization path. The great news about the SBIR program, and one that I tout internally, is because we're going through this process, the phase 1 and the phase 2, and we're selecting the ones with the best fit for DHS, then we're able to proceed with a phase 3 award, which is when it's no longer SBIR without further competition. And I have worked with our policy folks in our procurement shop or the contracting and helped to establish some practices that can help make sure that we can streamline those phase 3 awards within DHS. There's no dollar limit, there's no funding limit, and these are able to be done without further competition. If you've worked with the federal government, you can understand that, as part of making sure that we're using our taxpayers in a judicious way, there are rules about how we go forward with being able to procure things. And sometimes that means that can take a little extra time to make sure we're doing that properly. The great news, again, about the phase 3 is we can do that without some of those steps because we've already taken care of them in the phase 1 and the phase 2 process. All right, next slide, please. This is generally our timeline. I just like to give this as a general idea of what to expect for the DHS process. Because we have a roughly $18 to $20 million budget, which is not as large as some of our colleagues in the other agencies in SBIR, we only have one annual solicitation. That annual solicitation usually goes out mid-November for pre-solicitation, pre-release. We have to do that for at least 15 days. I like to do that for at least 30. And during that time, you would have the ability as a small business to be able to ask questions directly to the subject matter experts on these topics without it being public. So if you have a question on something, then you can ask that question, and your question, if it would divulge potentially your approach, no worries, that's going to happen directly between you and them. The only time the information that we're sharing during that may become public, which would not be inclusive of your information, is if we notice the same thing being asked over and over again, and we realize, oh, this is information that we should have, or we get it once, and we realize, oh, this is information that is fundamental to making sure that we're able to pursue the right best fit for DHS, we might update the topic. It won't include you, and it won't include anything that would be subject to your specific approach, but it may be information that we need to share based on the DHS perspective for what we're looking for. Once that pre-release closes, there is a small period of time in the solicitation open where you can ask questions, but those questions get collected, we collect the answers, and then those get posted again with the solicitation, which will be on sam.gov. So all of our solicitations go on to sam.gov. Those questions and answers will be there, not your identity, but the questions and answers. And then the solicitation typically is closing to mid-late January. We make sure that you're reading all of the information, make sure you're aware of those dates. Again, this is notional information. This can change at any time. Something could happen. When we were furloughed several years ago, we had to extend the solicitation close date. So sometimes things will happen beyond our control. So always make sure you're paying attention to exactly what's out there and understand what the requirements are. And then you'll see down at the bottom, there's something that says OATS RFI released. I'll talk more about that, but that is way more flexible and way more subject to what is happening and what we're working on in the year. Please see at the top sbir.dhs.gov. That is the very simple URL to be able to get to our portal. Our portal will be the place where you would submit your proposals if you're interested in the topic and submitting that proposal for consideration. Next slide. Successful proposal submission. So I talked a little bit about this at the beginning, that our requirements are going to be changing, some of those because of legislative requirements, but we also look to make sure that we're executing the process in a way that is best for the needs for the DHS. We try to make sure that we're doing things that make sense for the execution for small businesses and really be able to get to the goals of the program. So always read the solicitation instructions. There are things that will make you determined non-responsive if you do not do them properly. Non-responsive means we won't even be evaluating your submission because it's something that we can't award, and therefore we have to deem it non-responsive. So don't think, oh, well, I'll just get this in there and not worry about the details. The idea is the most important. The idea is the most important once we're able to receive a proposal and it can be evaluated fairly and objectively with the other submissions. So as a point of reference, we've gotten proposals in the past that have the wrong period of performance. They've said 9 months. We can't objectively review a proposal that somebody's considering that they have 9 months to execute against a proposal that says that is understanding that they only have 5 months. We don't know what you would choose to cull down into that 5 months. So it's not about, to the greatest degree possible, we try to take proposals that we can. We're not trying to eliminate people for mistakes. At the same time, there's things that mitigate or overcome our ability to do it objectively, and then we cannot do that. So make sure you're taking advantage of the pre-solicitation time. You're paying close attention to dollar, time, and page limits. You're understanding the TABA requirements. You can't just ask for TABA and not put in the work that is required to justify why you want to do it and how you're going to execute that. Address all aspects in the topic solicitation and the description. That doesn't necessarily mean you won't be responsive, but it does mean that it increases your chances of being selected. To understand, don't just take the idea that you already have and go, okay, well, I can jam this in there. Make sure you're doing it in a way that answers what we're trying to solve. Just make sure you clearly articulate your technical approach, tie your solution back to the requirement. Don't forget about commercialization, very important. Contact us if you have questions. Do not wait till the last minute. So I talked about when you can ask those questions during the pre-solicitation. I should have clarified, those are for technical clarification. You can always ask us a question related to the submission. Okay, I don't understand this. What do I have to do here? Sometimes we can tell you, okay, this is what you have to do. Sometimes we have to say, okay, here's what we're expecting. Here's what goes outside the bounds, but this is really a business decision that you have to make. But ask the questions. We had a situation several years ago where something was happening with our portal. We had to do an extension because the portal was doing something that we weren't expecting. We didn't find this out until a week and a half before the solicitation closed. If you notify us, we can make sure that we're doing things the way we need to sooner. Always ask questions. And I always say it again, read the solicitation. It is very painful when we have to deem a proposal submission non-responsive and we don't even get to consider it. I hate that. I hate that. I want to make sure that we're able to review all of the great ideas that you guys are coming with. Next slide. So these are the 4 things that your proposal will be evaluated against. The top 3 are qualitative, meaning that we're going to be looking at this in terms of excellence and those terms of things. We're going to be looking at how does your proposal meet the requirements we articulated in the topic. So technical merit is always our number 1. It's always the top priority in terms of the criteria. Staff qualifications and capability is our number 2 in the phase 1, and potential for commercialization is our number 3 in the phase 1. In phase 2, we flip those 2. The potential for commercialization becomes the number 2 criteria, and staff qualifications and capability becomes number 3. And then cost and price is we're making sure that this is that what's being proposed makes sense. So are the materials that are being proposed at a price that makes sense? Are the elements that we're expecting to see in there? If you're saying, hey, I'm going to spend $150,000 on going to conferences across the US, one every week, then we're going to have issues with, yes, that's not necessarily something that we would approve and be able to justify that that's a good use of the funds. So just make sure that you're understanding this is how that evaluation will take place and that you're giving the proper due in your limited number of pages to these elements. Next slide. Technical and business assistance. I promised I would talk about this more. So we get proposals all the time that are asking for TABA, as it's referred to. You can get $6,500 above the threshold for phase 1 for TABA, or $50,000 inclusive of the threshold for phase 2. So for phase 1, $150,000 threshold, you theoretically could propose $156,500. I say theoretically because you can't just say $156,500. You can do $150 for the submission of the work to be done to work towards concept feasibility. If you want to do the $6,500, then you must include the information that is in the solicitation, that is called out in the solicitation, that shows what you're going to be doing, who's going to be executing it, and what their credentials are for being able to do this. I do understand that means that you may be taking some room in your pages to ask for it, but that's the requirement. If you want to get that extra money, then you need to make sure that you're addressing those elements. If you do not, then, or you're asking for something that is not within scope of TABA, then we will reject that part of the proposal. This is one time where we can reject that without rejecting the entire proposal for consideration. Again, that said, make sure you're not proposing $152,000 and then $4,500 for TABA, because then you are non-responsive. The 150 is the threshold for the pursuit of the for the concept feasibility. The TABA in phase 2 is $50,000 inclusive of that threshold. You cannot propose a $1,050,000 proposal. You can propose $1 million, $50,000 of that may be for TABA. Same requirements in terms of providing the information to demonstrate how you're going to use it and that it's within the scope. So it is definitely more of a consideration in phase 2, because if you get rejected for that $50,000, now you only have $950, even if you get selected. So we don't flip-flop back and forth there. All right, next slide, please. So again, I would talk about other opportunities. So all of our phase 1 awardees will be offered the opportunity to participate in the I-Core program. We partner with NSF, who established this program. It is a resource-intensive program, but it is really great about helping small businesses understand, well, any business, understand how to get to your customers' requirements, how to actually get to what they need, instead of saying, okay, this is what we have. Do you want to figure out a place for it? I understand sometimes, you have a great idea and that's something that is a new space, it's disruptive, but it's also important to understand what your especially for SBIR, what your customers are needing. Commercialization Readiness Pilot Program is an opportunity where we can do additional funding on a phase 2 in the event that what we're getting in the original phase 2 is great, and we see the value, and we have a bigger commitment from a commercialization or transition partner. So this is something that you do not apply for as a small business. This is something that your topic manager would apply for. The federal person that is the topic manager would apply for. You can ask them about it, but ultimately it will be an internal request versus a push from the small business. Commercialization of Systems Marketplace is a program that we offer to all of our phase 2 awardees to participate in. And this is a program that allows us to provide you with some resources towards being able to develop a better commercialization path. So we can do things like market research, strategic planning, customer identification, and this is primarily built on where the business is coming in. So if you're a small business that's just getting started and may need more help in the beginning stages of this, we can do some things that are helpful there. If you're a small business coming in and you've been around a while, but there's some things that are important to understand for this particular topic and product that we're trying to pursue, then that can be done for that. And our other agency technology solutions, as I mentioned earlier, there's a couple ways we can pursue technologies that were originally being developed by another federal agency to be tweaked for DHS needs. We do this in a couple different ways. One of the things that we've done more recently in the past couple of years is we've published RFIs, requests for information. And so we will take an area where we think there's been a lot of work being done in the SBIR community with other federal agencies and say, okay, well, you have this, we want to know how what you've developed under an SBIR or a TTR from another federal agency could be tweaked to help us solve this problem. And it's a great way for us to be able to leverage the time and the funding that our colleagues have already put into efforts and us be able to sort of skip ahead. So that's a great thing to be able to do. And I love it because, again, the small businesses are innovative and agile, and that's in play even in the aspect of how would you use this technology in another way. So we can look ourselves, but sometimes we don't have the same perspective that you might you haven't necessarily considered approaching it with this type of technology. So I love that as well. All right, next slide. So we have a Deconstructing SBIR webinar series. This was established several years ago, I think 2016. And it's a great way for you to learn more about the DHS SBIR program. We do several per year. And in fact, almost always do one during the pre-solicitation period. And that's where we try to provide some information on some of the updates that have been made to the program or process, some of the new requirements, that sort of thing. So it's great to tune in and hear what's new with the SBIR program at that critical time of right before we're going forward to proposal submission. All right, and the QR code on the screen can take you to the YouTube page where we have the whole series. Next slide. We've had many successes, and the QR code on this screen can take you to a page where we've outlined several of them. I can't remember how many are on that page. There's more than we can get into a story, but just to understand that there is really an ability to be able to partner with us through the DHS SBIR program and get to commercialization, get to the finish line. This is a partnership. So there's pieces that we need you to step up to in that partnership, and there's places where we want to step up, and we want that to be a success. So we've done things with caller ID spoofing, which is typically something that is broadly appreciated. And then we've also done things for lost person locator for first responders in terms of being able to help them understand what the likelihood is of behavior to help narrow down the first steps that are taken towards finding a lost person and getting quicker to that lost person to be able to recognize them. All right, next slide. One of the great things that we have is a partnership guide. So this is helps folks that are new to the DHS mission space, understand all the different things being done at S&T. Now, I try to caveat this carefully. DHS SBIR program services all of the components throughout DHS, as talked to in the beginning, and the partnership guide helps to talk about where we do work in those mission spaces, and some of those things to help you better get to a context of what we do. Next slide. All right, how to connect with us. So given a couple ideas throughout the presentation already, but a couple things that you may want to know, you can contact our office. So if you have questions about the program, stsbir.program@hq.dhs.gov will go to a mailbox where somebody on the team is always monitoring. We also have a number where you can call, leave messages, connect with us that way. And then also you can join our mailing list. So we send out some things throughout the year. We don't just send out spam. We do have a quarterly information document that we send out, but we're not sending out things continually. We send out when we're going to have a deconstructing SBIR. We send out when we're having a pre-solicitation open or when we're having a solicitation open to make sure that folks are in the know ahead of time. Well, not ahead of time, but you know, proactively. So you can do that, and you can follow us on social media because we also try to make sure that we're putting out social media about all the events that we'll be attending. So if you want to make sure that you're going to be aware of when we'll be at an event, you may be able to schedule a one-on-one with us. You can follow us, or we'll put that in our quarterly information distribution, the SBIR IQ, SBIR Information Quarterly. Okay, next slide. So as promised, I'm going to be shifting, and I'm going to be talking to the LRBAA program, which is another excellent opportunity. I don't know if there's any questions that we should field about the SBIR program before I get too into the weeds of LRBAA. Okay. Stop me if you decide that we should. All right. So the LRBAA program, the long-range broad agency announcement. So LRBAA is a BAA. I'm not sure if everybody on the line is aware of what a BAA is, and I will say that the SBIR program is very much like a BAA, and some of the agencies even post their topics under a BAA, because it is, as I spoke to about the SBIR program, it's a great way for us to say, hey, here's a challenge, and we're looking for solutions to that challenge. We're not prescribing, hey, we want you to do this, develop this particular thing. Here's how you're going to do it. Here's the steps. This is us saying, here's, you know, how would you propose that we can approach a solution to this challenge? The LRBAA is a little bit different in that these are high-level topics. They're not detailed in terms of a specific need. We currently have 32 open topics, high level and broad. Next slide. And they're categorized in those 6 categories that were shown on this slide. The process for the LRBAA, because these are broad topics and in spaces.
I'm sorry, but my computer froze, and we have 3 questions that I would love to present to you.
Okay, great.
Number 1, it says, what are the initial initiatives in place to embed green technology battery renewable system, primarily in vehicles used for machines and handheld equipment?
Yeah, so we put out topics that are specific, and some of the agencies do not. Our topics are specific challenges under SBIR. Given that doesn't mean that you cannot incorporate green into those, and there might be, as part of the topics, a requirement that is specifically addressing, like, you know, we need to make sure that this is low power consumption, or, you know, that the issue is related to you know, how we are impacting the environment. So those can be incorporated. The DHS mission space doesn't typically lend itself to us doing topics simply on green. There's usually an element of the security, Homeland Security in there. That said, that can be, hey, more power efficient resources for disaster relief or that sort of thing.
Great. So we also have another question from Shmuel Umershami. It says, how innovating programs of Department of Homeland Security can support improvement on social well-being and food security for poor and low economic groups of population in the U.S. Thank you, Shmuel.
Yeah, so the Homeland Security mission often gets included in that when we're talking about disaster relief. So often we're talking about, again, going back to how we can work with community resiliency and FEMA support. So there can be issues of food supply and shortages, particularly in response to disasters. So when we would be approaching that, I think it would typically be through a disaster response or FEMA support, that sort of thing, or community resiliency.
Great. So we have a question from an anonymous attendee. Says, can you expand on what TABA is and what it might cover?
Yeah. So I think they might have submitted that one prior to my slide on that. I will say that if you go out to our website, if you Google DHS SBIR, you can go out to our website and you can see information about our program. And then we will reference back in the solicitation, also the SBA site on TABA. But basically, TABA's role is to help a company be able to further their business resources. So it can be things like developing a proper cost accounting system, because in phase one, we're going to be giving you a firm fixed price phase one contract, meaning we're going to define the deliverables. The deliverables will be reports. You submit a report, we're going to pay you. When we get to the phase two, we understand that we're asking you to do something that's never been done before. That's inherently what we're doing. We're doing innovation. So as part of that, we want to make sure that we're not asking you to do something that puts you and your business at risk. Meaning, if we strictly define the deliverables and give you a firm fixed price phase two contract, then whatever we agreed that was going to be the cost of going into it, that's what you're going to get paid. So if we said this is going to cost $50,000 and it ends up costing you as a business $70,000 because this innovation didn't go as we had planned, then you only get $50,000. So I adamantly pursue phase two contracts as a cost plus fixed fee. To do that, you have to be able to demonstrate that you can, as a business, account for what cost, what resources, what elements have been used towards the execution of this contract, which requires a proper cost accounting system for your budgeting. So you can use that money and say, hey, we're going to work with an accounting firm or whatever is appropriate to be able to develop a proper cost accounting system. So it's things like that are used under the TABA. And if there's questions about it, again, you can go to those resources. If you need help getting to those resources, you can email our office at stsbir.program@hq.dhs.gov, and we can send those to you.
Well, for now, I would love to continue listening to more of your presentation. We take a quick break from the questions and listen to your presentation, and then we'll circle back to the questions. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
Perfect.
Thanks. So back to LRBAA, because these are broad, high-level topics, and we're not giving you kind of more specifics about the specific challenge that we're trying to address. This is a broader challenge. We have a three-step process, and that first step starts with a light lift of a 3-page white paper, quad chart, and an optional demonstration video if you're at a TRL 4 or later, something that can be demonstrated in a video. So the idea is that this is light lift. You give us a general idea of what you're trying to pursue, what you think would be a good avenue for us to pursue under the scope of the topic. And then we will review that and say whether there's interest at DHS in that. If there's not interest, then that's where that process ends under the LRBAA. But if there is interest, we'll recommend you to go forward. And that means that we think there might be something there that we'd be interested in pursuing. The next step in the LRBAA is the virtual pitch. and you will have 20 minutes to present 12 slides, and then there will be it's about what you're trying to pursue, give more details, be able to speak to it, which is nice sometimes. And then the government takes a little bit of time to gather and make sure that they know what questions they have. And then there's 15 minutes for them to be able to ask you questions. They cannot, as in with the SBIR and our technical clarification questions, we are never going to say, don't do this instead. We will ask questions. Those questions may lead you to understand, okay, they asked several questions on this one element. Either we need to make sure that we're describing that, better if we think we have it tackled, and or it may be something like, oh, we need to make sure that we have a mitigation path for this potential risk. It can still be enlightening, but we wouldn't be saying, do this instead, then you'll get awarded or not awarded. It's just what the questions are. If you are recommended from there, then at that point, we're going forward to the written proposal. This process is to help alleviate because these again are broad topics, alleviate the requirement for a written proposal, which if done well, can cost $100,000 or more in resources, to the ones that we have the highest amount of interest in. If you get to the written proposal, that doesn't guarantee that we're going to be pursuing an award. In fact, that's what the recommendation out of the third step is whether we are looking to be able to pursue an award or whether it's no longer recommended. The part about this that you need to understand is when we get the step 1 abstract, make sure that you're providing and doing the due diligence that provides the best ability to speak to what the rough costs are, what the rough estimate and time frame are, so that we're not saying, hey, we're interested in this, but you put down, hey, it's only going to cost $250,000, but then we find out, oh, it's going to cost $2 million. Or the opposite, you're saying it's going to cost $2 million. Well, that's not something we'd pursue for $2 million. Well, then if you really did the due diligence, it would only cost 1.5, and maybe that is something that we can afford to do. So make sure you're approaching all of these steps thoughtfully and, with the right amount of consideration, even though we're trying to make it a light lift through this process. So yeah, and so this is a great way, aside from the SBIR process where we don't do open topics with DHS because of our funding thresholds and our budget. This is a great way to be able to pursue some things, and you can pursue things that you've developed under other SBIR federal agency programs or other things through the LRBAA. Next slide. So it's careful, though, to understand what LRBAA can do. And this is fundamentally part of what BAAs are allowed to do as part of the FAR, typically. So we can do basic and applied research. We can do unique prototypes. We can do mature technology improvements. But all of this is you coming to us and saying, this is what we are going to do. This is what we propose to do. And then we're going to deliver that back to you. And hopefully this next part will help to clarify that. We cannot do support services. That's including, hey, we have the ability to test things like UAVs. We can provide you with the testing of that. Here's how we would do it. The problem is that's still support services because you're not telling us the exact product that you intend to deliver. You're not telling us here's what those results would be because you don't know what we would decide we want tested. We cannot do evaluation of other contractors' performance. Again, that UAV testing one is a great example of that as well. So it's not you evaluating somebody else's performance or program. You cannot do research for the short consortia, association, partnerships, combinations. This is you coming, hey, this is us, and this is how we're planning to perform and execute. You can have subcontracting. This means that you're getting pieces of that work done because you have, a need for additional resources, but that you are overseeing it, you are executing it, and it's essentially to the government just a part of what's being delivered to us. Mature products, so this is not for procurement, this is for the furtherance of development of things through a TRL process or scale. And the development of a specific system or solutions. This is confusing sometimes to people because of what I said earlier. We're not pursuing a specific system or hardware solution, meaning we are not telling you this is exactly what we want. We're telling you, here's the area in which we have challenges. Please give us your ideas. When you're submitting to this, you should be saying specifically what you're going to be developing. We're just not pursuing them specifically. So hopefully that helps provide that clarification. All right, next slide. So lrbaa.admin@hq.dhs.gov is how you can ask questions, or if you have things you want to email us about, that's the best way to contact us. And we should also have a phone number. I think it's the 6000. We can get back to that. But then the QR code, if you want to get to us, and that'll take you to our portal, scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, and the image on the right, similar to the SBIR, is how you sign up. And you can do individually for LRBAA or SBIR, or you can do for multiples at the same time. And then I think that's the end of my presentation. Yep. Happy to take more questions. I know you're having technical difficulties.
Yeah, so we have a few more questions here. Another one from an anonymous attendee says, oh, sorry. It says, what type of background/credibility do you expect business owners to have? Do you expect an extensive list of past work?
So that's a great question. So especially particularly in submitting to the SBIR, when I'm doing the training for our evaluators, I am specifically telling them you cannot put down as a weakness that this company doesn't have prior federal government experience, prior DHS experience. That does not mean you don't have to be coming to the table being able to demonstrate the fact that the folks on the team have the ability to potentially carry this out. And that's kind of the scale of what that performance, the key personnel criteria is. So you're coming to us and we're looking at what's being presented, and we're saying, okay, given the scope of what you've proposed to do, so it has to be relevant to what you're proposing. What is the likelihood of success given the folks that they've identified as the key personnel? So that doesn't mean everybody has to come with a PhD, or anybody has to come with a PhD. They're like you know, some of the things such as cybersecurity may come with, hey, we have people that have, you know, certifications in multiple types of software. So it's relevant to what's being proposed that you should be able to demonstrate there's a likelihood of success based on the people that you have involved.
Great. We also have another question from Grace Fernandez. It says, my company is certified responsible recycler. Is recycling of electronics and data construction, is that a, no. My computer is certified, my company is certified responsible recliner for service, electronics and data construction, something that we could partner up with the DHS?
So what I would want you to do is give thoughtful consideration to what I outlined at the beginning. Is these are the areas that DHS is responsible in terms of a mission. The important part of this is that sometimes when it's not the best fit for our agency, and I'm not saying this isn't fit anywhere, when it's not the best fit for our agency, it's not that we don't care about pollution. It's not that we don't care about recycling. It's not that we don't care about green. We have to have the proper expertise in order to make sure that what's being done is furtherance in that area. And we don't have experts in absolutely everything needed for the federal government. So again, it depends on how you're approaching it. I'm not going to say no. I'm saying look at our mission space and then look at where the opportunities are within there and see how it may fit to what DHS is looking for.
Thank you so much, Dusty, for answering that question. We have another one. It says, does the SBIR own the products created through the program, or does the company?
I forgot that part. Oh, thank you so much. We are non-dilutive funding, meaning we are not taking ownership. I kind of referenced it a little bit, but yeah. So our funding is non-dilutive. We're not taking ownership of the company and or the products. We will have government use rights, meaning that we can use it internal to the government. We can't take what you've provided and go out and say, thank you very much. Now we're going to have Raytheon or 3M develop this because, you know, we know that they'll develop it and, you know, blah, blah, blah. you will own the data, and that's inclusive of the intellectual property. So we will have government use for internal government use and review purposes only. You will own the intellectual property.
Also, we have somebody looked up your LinkedIn, so there is something that needs to be fixed. They posted. Just I figure put it out there. We have Alan Jones. One of the submissions you received for SBIR, what percentage is awarded on phase 1?
So my LinkedIn says I graduated from a state university, and that is not a mistake. I care about my identity, and I choose not to share some specific information in those forums because I want to make myself more resilient to identification of that. So it's not a mistake, but thank you for mentioning it. I'm sorry. Can you read? I felt it was important in this context to be able to share that, cybersecurity. So I'm sorry.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I try to, avoid in detail certain things. You've answered these 2 already. We have Pat.
I didn't answer the last one you asked, so I'm sorry.
We will workforce organization, optimization, utilization software system be considered as a global for research project specialty for healthcare or public safety personnel?
So I think those are inherently, as I would look at it, key for successful business no matter what. So yeah, I guess I'm a little bit confused about the question. I think that I don't know why workforce organization wouldn't be something of consideration for all approaches. It should be something considered. So if there's further clarification for that I'm not thinking of, then.
We also have an anonymous question. It says, what is the usefulness or potential of an investment company with an MBE certification as a federal/state vendor or contractor as a startup investment firm in the health sector?
So the programs I work at, going back to the question of what are we taking ownership, are not considered an investment in the company per se. We're investing in the technology. Inherently, I think that investment helps, is sort of remotely or work around to an investment with the company, in that we're now partnering for the success of the development of this technology, which impacts the company's business prospects. I am not the expert in this for what DHS does for an investment or how we work with companies. I would go to OSDBU, OSDBU, Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization, to ask them about the DHS mission spaces. I wouldn't want to be inaccurate about everything that we can offer.
Right. So we have a question from Jeff. It says, hello, thank you for this information. I have a continuing accounting business. Would it be considered for these opportunities?
Okay, have an accounting business, would it be considered for these opportunities? Is that the one I'm answering? So if there's an innovation we're seeking and you have an idea for how that can be developed, if it's an accounting process, an accounting is something that can be done with accounting software, if that is out there, then certainly. We tend, in the financial areas, we tend to concentrate on things, well, not concentrate, we tend to do things related to securing the infrastructure for financial institutions. So theoretically, there could be something out there along those lines. That's my first thought of how there may be an opportunity to partner with DHS. You're on mute.
Sorry.
Background noise that was contributing.
Yes. Would it be possible to have a discussion with someone in a particular area, such as CISA?
Yeah, so there's there will be opportunities, obviously, to speak with us. As I said, we'll be putting out those related to our quarterly information. But we also participate in vendor outreach sessions. Those sessions may have folks from CISA to be able to connect with. If you're looking for specifics for CISA in general, then our program covers the expanse of providing technologies, providing an avenue to be able to get those to those folks. We certainly can't be the experts in all things across the DHS mission space. I'm not that talented. I mean, there might be somebody out there that is, but that's not the scope that we can contain. So I would look at, again, OSDBU, which puts on the vendor outreach sessions. There's also small business specialists. So if you Google DHS small business specialists, there'll be one for CISA. You can try to reach out to them. So depending on what you're talking about related to CISA.
Great. Thank you so much for all the time that you took to present and to answer all these questions. We have two last questions here that we will answer. It says, what percentage of submission to the ISBIR are awarded phase 1 funding?
Great question. 17% of the proposals submitted to the DHS SBIR program are based on historical awarded to phase 1. That can vary broadly by topic. We will get some topics that will have, we got 40 proposals to a topic that was pretty popular area right now last time, and then we got some that had 8. So it's not an odds scenario, but we are happy with the fact that we're able to offer that opportunity to a significant number of folks that want to partner with us.
Great. So we have 2 questions that I'm going to combine into one. If someone has a business from a diverse industry, such as accounting, we have also somebody else who's in the furniture industry, right? How would they benefit from these opportunities?
So I'm going to go back to this is why I put at the beginning of the presentations, why I like to make sure that we're providing some information on the DHS scope. So to the best of my ability, I always like to, if somebody comes forward and says, hey, we have this idea, I always like to say, okay, here's where I think that this may have some applicability. That said, I'm not a business consultant. It's not my area of specialty. So I would look at the mission spaces. This is one of the pieces where, as I said, it's a partnership, and that partnership requires some work for both of us. And so I would look at the partnership guide, look at the spaces that we're developing, technologies for, because I don't want to speak to this. I'd like to use the example of, there was a prize competition put out one time, and they had an industry day, and they were having folks come in for the industry to hear more about the challenge. And it was for the development of a new hazmat suit, I believe was the challenge. And somebody that signed up was a wedding dressmaker. And they said, are you sure you're at the right thing? They're like, yep. And they actually, I believe, it could be urban legend, I believe they did end up submitting something that got considered and did get some sort of prize. So this is where I want to be very careful about how I look at this. You guys are part of a small business that is innovative and agile. I want to make sure that we provide to you the information about what our needs are, and then from there, be open to what you bring forward.
Great. And I also want to remind all of our attendees, we are NJSBDC. We provide small business consulting, so we can guide you. We have counselors that will guide you through the process to what's best for you and how to help you achieve your goal the best possible way. We can help you with grants, writing your business plan, help you polish your business to maximize profit, and many other things. Also, we have another side that we record all of our webinars. where you can rewatch everything. Just in case you miss any information, there will be posted for you. And just a quick reminder, submit your 3-minute survey so we can reply back with this presentation, so you can have all the links, so you can have all the information that Dusty has presented to you. Well, thank you, Dusty, for today's presentation. We're very thankful to have you, and thank you for everything you shared. I also took some notes myself. This is very exciting. I will be sharing my screen now.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for everybody's time.
What happened here? Okay, here it is. Oh. But that was Dusty Lang. I just want to remind everyone, for next week, we're very, very, very excited to play a webinar that had caused a lot of sensation for many, many small business owners, how to start a successful business from zero. This is a replay because a lot of people are interested on how to get their business going. Even if you have already established your business and you want a little push, or maybe you skip a step, this is always good to as a good refresher to help your business grow. So make sure you scan this QR code to register for next week's webinar. I will be hosting the next event. Please remember that we provide no cost, zero pitch to proposal consulting. So we're here to help you start your business and put it all together. We have an amazing team. We also provide training events, and we also provide you with small business resources to help your business grow. Wherever you are in the state, make sure you point your camera towards the QR code to make sure you get with our tech team. Thank you so much for being part of this webinar, and we'll see you next week with Ryan's presentation. Have a great day.